All right, welcome back to another WrightStew Podcast. I am Paul Stewart.
And I am Brian Wright. And hey, pretty special day. Ben Orlando. I introduced him, Paul. We don't get many guests, and not many guests with this many accolades and really, really interesting stories. We've listened to a number of his podcasts on Spotify, or I have, and really well done, really well thought out. And he's given us a little bit of his time.
Yeah. So Ben Orlando, the host of the Midnight Library of Baseball podcast. I've recently been turned on to it, and it is now officially my favorite podcast, outside of the WrightStew Podcast, of course. But Ben does a fantastic job. But Ben is also an author. He's written a novel, several short stories, a screenplay, amongst several things. But Ben, thank you so much for being on with us today. If you don't mind, for our audience, just share a little more about Midnight Library of Baseball, what it is, and kind of how it came about.
Sure. Well, Paul, Brian, thank you for having me. Try to shorten version. So I wrote a novel.
Short. You can go long.
Yeah. Okay.
Time.
So I wrote a novel. It's about a female knuckleball pitcher, and got an agent, and was talking to my agent, putting it, going through the publishers and all that, and editing it. And she's like, you want to think of something to, just accompany this, kind of try to build your audience. And I'm like, I don't know. She's like, well, something that you really just love to do and that you can do consistently. And you're both talking about it. It's hard to do something consistently. And I love to do research. And I really got back into baseball, which, was the culmination of this novel of probably 7-8 years ago. And, there's a history of baseball with me. Loved baseball growing up with my dad, the goods and bads, and ended up going to Peace Corps for 2 years, stayed in El Salvador for 4 years. And in that time, I really broke contact with all sports. And so when I came back, it was just, I don't know what I was doing. I mean, I still played sports, but I didn't follow sports that much. And then I started to read, and I never stopped reading, but I started to read baseball novels again every summer. Like the start of every summer, I would just dig in, and I would read as many as I could find. And that got me into writing about it again and then following it again. And so over the years, I gotten back into it, and that led to this podcast, Midnight Library of Baseball. And like you said, Paul, like I like some of the same podcasts that you do, Freakonomics, Revisionist History. It's like uncovering the unknown and the
untold truths.
Yeah. And also just taking something that people do know about and trying to, twist it turn it on its head to give people a new perspective, but also really digging into the human side of it, the emotional. And so that's where this podcast came from. So I'm also a psychotherapist. So, that's my job now, and digging into the human side. That's really what I want to do here. And a lot of it came together in season 1. I started to do some research on Field of Dreams, and I didn't realize how much I connected with that film. And there was this moment where I was like, oh, that's why I'm doing this podcast. It's like because of my relationship with my father. And it felt so cliche, but it was like this voice was coming up inside of me. It's like, this is why you're doing this, and you can probably connect with this. Like certain times your head gets in the way, you intellectualize, you get in your thoughts, but then a feeling comes up, and it's like, you just know it's true just from your body. And like, it felt like that's a big reason why I'm doing this and what I want to infuse in the podcast so that people can hear these stories and connect. And this comes through a lot on Instagram, surprisingly, because I avoided social media for years, but it's been amazing. Like people connecting through these reels that are about my podcast, and just, people crying over these stories that are so emotional, and it's so impacting to me. It's like, oh, I can't believe people are connecting this way, and I'm connecting with people. So, that's
wonderful.
Answer.
That's so cool to hear. So, You mentioned growing up, you were a baseball fan. What team did you pull for growing up?
So I pulled for the Red Sox. Was a big Wade Boggs fan. So
Oh man, we love Wade Boggs. We love Wade Boggs on the Stoop. The chicken, the
the
beer,
Chicken Man, yeah.
I mean, the 338 lifetime hitter, whatever he is.
Yeah, I didn't know anything about the chicken, anything about the beer, and I don't know why I went for Wade Boggs. He wasn't a power hitter, but he was consistent. And just what he was able to do, like it's like he was able to just manipulate Fenway for his
play pepper with the wall.
Yeah. But then I grew up in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania.
Okay.
And we didn't get the Red Sox, we got the Yankees. And so I grew up just watching Yankees baseball. Phil Rizzuto and Tom Seaver were the commentators. The commentators, yeah. So it's like inadvertently I became a Yankees fan because they weren't really good at that time. But I liked the common players had posters of Mark McGuire, and Jose Canseco, the Bash Brothers, and and also baseball cards. Baseball cards was huge for me in really getting into the game, and it was just so fun to learn about players and statistics, and it feels like you're really connecting with somebody and them through the baseball card. So
with the two sentences on the bottom that says Jose Canseco likes to drive Porsches really fast, things of that nature as well. Those couple sentences are always really wild to me as a kid to read about it, because you're like, oh man, like Don Mattingly, he doesn't really love to shave, but he's growing that mustache, whatever it says on there.
Yeah. So and I think that fills in the story. And then went to Fenway. My parents took me and my sister. God, I don't know what year that was. That's probably 12. Went to Yankee Stadium a couple times. I mean, Philly, the Veterans Stadium was probably the closest, but only went there a handful of times. Wasn't a big Phillies fan.
Yeah, the vet was not. It was the cookie cutter 1960s.
Yeah.
Hey, you definitely didn't have nostalgia right there. Hey, I got a question. And you may have shared it. I listened to some of your podcasts, man.
Yeah.
But whenever you talk about in reference to how you felt kind of that connection, what was your baseball story growing up? What was your what position? How long did you play? Where did you feel, kind of that voice?
Yeah. So playing baseball, I grew up playing Little League, and I don't know. I'm one of the tens or hundreds of thousands, maybe millions of guys who's like, yeah, I really feel like I could have been a this or that, like a pitcher. I had a strong arm, but nobody would put me in because I was wild. But I played center field, and this was Little League because I stopped. I never played high school. I switched to tennis, but I remember throwing somebody out at home plate, and it's like, wow. And I was really young. So I was a great fielder, but I couldn't hit the ball. So I struck out all the time.
You're a really good fielder, Ben, if you can't hit the ball.
Yeah, right, that's right. Yeah. But it was, it was tumultuous relationship with my dad. He taught me a lot about many different things. He taught me about baseball, but it was, very stressful at times. And I think that ultimately led me to leave baseball and go to another sport. So I didn't end up playing that long. Played, some softball here and there. But that's my relationship.
Tennis seems pretty stressful when it comes to sports. I have a daughter who played through high school, and that's a very frustrating sport to watch. The referee in their own points. That feels like a much more stressful. Every time you throw it up, you get your first serve is just barely out, or the other player lied about it being out because they're not good people, and then all of a sudden you got to get the second one in. That seems a lot more stressful than baseball to me as a parent.
I don't know. I think you bring with you whatever's going on inside to any sport, and so I definitely flipped out. Like that was the only place where I got my temper out. And I almost got ejected a bunch of times. Yeah, right. Yeah. Yeah. But it's been like because I started playing tennis again in the last I don't know 8 years, and it's really been great to work on my control and anger, and
Like therapy.
yeah, everything gets overblown, right? Everything becomes a big deal, and I really think whatever sport you're going into, if you have some of these issues going on, a self-critical voice, then that's going to come out, and then it's not fun, and it sucks.
Yeah, then you're just beating yourself up the whole time. And
Yeah.
in baseball, we talk about it all the time. The ultimate game of failure, right? If you succeed, it's not something I don't like that message at all. Like, hey, if you fail, 7 out of 10 times, you're in the Hall of Fame. And it's like, well, it's not what you want to tell people, right? And so Brian and I, we talk a lot about that with the kids we coach. It's like, it's about setting realistic expectations and goals for yourself. Like, you can't go into a weekend saying, I'm going to go 7 for 10.
Yeah.
Because it's likely not going to happen.
Hmm.
If you can control, like, I'm going to move runners over. I'm going to have quality at bats. I'm going to hit the ball hard. I'm going to throw strike, those sort of things. So,
do you feel like that's different for pitchers? Like that, I mean, hitters, it's, 3 out of 10 is fantastic, but for pitchers, like it's a different dynamic, right?
For pitchers, it's more so throwing first pitch strikes,
okay,
limiting walks, pitching to contact when necessary, right? Not falling behind in counts, controlling those sort of things, getting your second or third pitch over for strikes more consistently. And again, the kids we're coaching are 13 right now, so they're still developing, right? And there's going to be some growing pains with that, but it's about always, we talk, it's not winning and losing, it's winning and learning.
Yeah.
So either you're winning or you're learning something.
Yeah.
Bro.
I would just say from the hitting standpoint, we're big on, one pitch at a time from a mental focus standpoint, right? And so a lot of times you get so caught up in kind of the end goal that everybody sees, and ultimately all you're trying to do is make sure you lock in on that one pitch, on that one. All you can control is the next thing in your mind, right? And so if you jump to this end, hey, I want to be 7 for 10, and you're already 0 for 8, then you're defeated. So it's really, from a mentality standpoint, it has to be the next pitch. And I think it's the same way with pitching. No matter what happens, you're still, ultimately, you want to throw that first pitch strike, but if you don't, you want to throw that next pitch strike.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. I'm noting right now an episode. It's like, as I'm thinking, the episodes pop up in my head. It's like, and I was just talking to somebody yesterday about coaching and little league. So, like, for the two of you getting your experience from minor league, but also this coaching perspective, like, I'd love to set up another talk.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think our mentality is a lot different from a lot of the folks we coach against. Because we had the luxury of doing it. We had the privilege, the honor of, like, I got up to AAA for a couple of years, and Brian played a couple of years of pro ball and was actually All-American at NC State. So our perspective is, like, we're not living through our kids.
Yeah, right.
Whereas a lot of folks are. Like, we want them to be as successful as they possibly can be. But if they're not, it's okay. Like, we get it. So
yeah.
Different perspective. But Ben, you mentioned something earlier. You like to take things and twist it on its head and kind of share the human perspective. So I actually listened to a few now, but the series on the 1919 White Sox / Black Sox, and you told the story of Charlie Comiskey and how that was kind of the human element. And he was seen as, like, kind of a bad guy, kind of like the guy that was, the ruthless owner sort of thing. But he was really just a kind of a businessman. He was taking care of guys and actually paid people really, really well.
Yeah.
One of the interesting things about that story as well was so the Black Sox notoriously, the 8-man out, and the book, which kind of led to the conceptions that we had now, and you kind of debunked some of those, which was really interesting. So tell us a little bit about that scandal, what you learned, some of the things that your eyes were open to as you did the research on the 1919 Black Sox.
Yeah. Well, I think it's interesting how one narrative, one account can really just, it's like a ripple that just goes out and now that's what everybody knows, and it's really hard to change that. It's like when a lie gets out, it's hard to come back, even if it's a lie. And Elliot Asanoff wrote 8 Men Out, and that was the truth for 40 years.
Yeah.
And then in the late 1990s, some researchers started digging up court documents, and they were finding new information. It's like one of the biggest misperceptions, and this was in the movie and the book, was that Eddie Seacott was promised this huge bonus, $10,000 if he got 30 wins, and then Comiskey sat him out for the rest of the season so he wouldn't get that win, and that was just bunk. And they found his contract, and it wasn't in it. So just, things like that. And yeah, Comiskey paid his players well, but it's not like he wasn't a villain. He was kind of a normal person, a normal manager or owner at the time. And it's like when you look at people, you have to look at them through the lens of their contemporaries,
Yeah,
and,
that's interesting.
and how people were at the time. And they just, for better or worse, they didn't understand a lot of things, and players were commodities. And, there's going to be a tipping point where which is true today. If you pay a player enough, he's not going to cheat, because what's the point?
Yeah.
I don't know what that number would have been at the time, but they didn't approach it, even though, they were still making a lot. But he didn't connect with his players. There was no seeming respect. And so that could have had a lot to do with them deciding to cheat and screw him over.
But in the podcast, you mentioned that cheating was almost accepted.
Yeah.
Right? I don't want to say accepted, but people turned a blind eye to it. It was definitely a part of baseball.
Yeah. I mean, and that you brought up this point in an email, right, about the connection between what happened in the 1900s and 1919 and what happened in the 1990s with the steroid scandal.
That's kind of where I wanted to go with it, because, like I said, I played in the heart of the steroid era.
Yeah.
And one of my soapboxes I stand on is Bud Selig is in the Hall of Fame.
Yeah.
Bud Selig oversaw what was going on in that time frame, and I was playing, everybody knew what was going on. It was very clear.
But from your perspective, playing at the time, it's like everybody knew what was going on, but there wasn't going to be any kind of punishment, right? There were no consequences for doing that.
If you made it to the big leagues at the time, there was no actual testing for it. It was kind of one of those things. If your ability or your talent or your stats justified you to the big leagues, once you got to the big leagues, you could kind of do whatever you needed to do to stay there or to take steps forward.
Yeah. I don't know. Do you want to move on to that? Like, we can go back, but like you said, cheating was accepted because the owners were looking the other way. They didn't want to face it because they didn't want public outcry and their ticket sales, because everything was about ticket sales at the time. There was no television contracts, no radio. And so everything was about bringing people into the ballpark, and they didn't want anything to interfere with that. So
tickets and selling hot dogs, right? And sodas.
Yeah,
that sort of thing.
Yeah.
So the parallels are interesting. And what parallels do you see, though, between that era and the era of the 1990s, or what are some of the differences as well? Are there similarities and differences, or does it look very similar to you, and how did it affect one era?
Yeah, I think it looks similar in that, I don't know, it's unrealistic to expect humans to not be humans, like because they're in a certain position. Like, oh, they're baseball players, they have a duty to be something beyond a human being without human feelings and needs, and I think that was the assumption or expectation in the 1900s. And I touched upon this, like as a coal miner or somebody working 6-7 days a week, you see a baseball player and it's like, they should be happy. They're playing a game they love. They're actually making money, and compared to other people, they're making a good living. But once you're in that position for a few years, then it's all relative, and
it becomes a job.
Yeah, and
But you're not going to get black lunged, so you got that going for you.
Yeah.
Well, that is a positive. No death, or not as much death. Back in the day, you get hit in the head.
Yeah.
That'd be a different story.
Yeah.
No
Now you
helmets.
get beanball. Yeah, you talked about that on your podcast. Kind of the beanball and the intimidation of the 1920s as well. And how
but they didn't have the healthcare plans, or
helmets.
yeah. And if you got hurt at that time,
You're done.
you weren't guaranteed to get paid. So there were a lot of differences. There was, in addition to, a lack of huge salaries, there wasn't a lot of job security. So it made sense if you could make, double or triple what you were making in a year by gambling or in a few games, then it made sense. And if nobody's saying anything and it's kind of accepted, not that everybody did it, but why wouldn't you do that? So I see a parallel there, because C League and baseball, they had an idea what was going on. It's like, how can you not? But there was
They knew. It wasn't an idea. They knew.
Yeah, there was a strike, the 1994 strike, and baseball was getting a bad name, right? A bad reputation. And so then everybody's starting to hit home runs, and all of a sudden fans are coming back. There are these home run races, and it looks great. And so they're not going to stop that. So,
well, and you did the podcast on the 3 greatest home run races of all time.
Yeah.
And I was actually listening to it with my daughter in the car. And before you started, you didn't say what they were. I said it's going to be 27, 61, and 98. and that's what they were.
Yeah.
And clearly the 27, Ruth and Gehrig was really, really great. And then 61, the famous movie, 61 by Billy Crystal, and that one was not fun. But the 98 one, I lived through. Actually, saw McGuire and Sosa both play that summer because I was playing in the Midwest League. So saw McGuire at Old County Stadium in Milwaukee, and then saw Sammy Sosa in Chicago for a game. Or both early in the season, so didn't know like that was going to be happening. But to our earlier point, it was bringing baseball back, like from that strike.
Yeah.
And there was eyes on it. There was media attention. McGuire and Sosa looked like comic book heroes.
Yeah.
Big muscles, and then this, and you've talked about it, the dynamic between kind of a young, Dominican, black skin versus kind of the Mark McGuire, who's a little more the Southern Cal, kind of more quiet, a little more stern, a little more focused, big giant white guy. Like the contrast and the playfulness they had between them was, man, it was cool. Like the country loved it. Like I can't imagine a baseball story like that kind of being as relevant now, almost 30 years later.
Yeah. And I just think it's fascinating, the debate, because it can go in so many different directions. It's going into, it's really about advantage. You can say there are health issues with steroids, but I mean, one of the arguments is if there's more regulation, then you can have control over what's happening.
Yeah.
Was it Ken Caminiti who he died, wasn't it? Because
he died recently. Yeah. He was 93, 90 or MVP, whatever, for the Astros.
Yeah.
He looked like, and I assumed it was confirmed him too, Paula. You might can speak on it. I don't know 100%, but he definitely had the look of a very 90s.
Yeah.
He
was not. Yeah.
Yeah. But what is? It's hard. It's like, what is an advantage? People can train at high altitude, and if they have the money, they can go do that, and that can give you an advantage. And
hey Ben, I'll tell you this. So my perspective changed from when I was playing. I thought absolutely they should not make it. I was frowned upon. I didn't do it. I knew people that did do it. I was completely against it when I was in the moment of it. As I've gotten older and farther away from it, I felt like there were so many guys on it. How can you hold? And there was so much good that it did for the game.
Yeah.
That you cannot really, you shouldn't punish Bonds and Clemens and all these guys who did really great things, and Sosa, McGuire, because of all the good. It's almost a balancing act a little bit. And maybe that's not the right way to relay it. But my view definitely changed from when I was playing and kind of involved, saw it And I was curious, has yours changed your perspective? Like when all that stuff was kind of starting to come out in the early 2000s and you saw these people associated with it, has your opinion of it changed as far as how you view it?
It's so complicated. It's like another, I mean, I don't know. It's hard to sit down and say it is okay or it's not. I mean, because one of the other points is because, Barry Bonds, Mark McGwire, Sammy Sosa, like they weren't the only people doping, and yet they still outperformed so many others. And it's not like everybody. I mean, there was a jacking up of the home run totals, but it's not like everybody who was taking steroids, who was already a major league player, were putting up these numbers. So it's I don't know. I feel like I give a lot of leeway.
You still had to put the ball in play. You still had to hit it on the barrel.
Yeah.
And we talked about that. And so Brian and I did a recent episode about, I think it was the best 6-year runs of players of all time ever.
Yeah.
And we're going to talk about somebody that's near and dear to your heart now.
Chuck Klein.
Chuck Klein.
Yeah.
Well, we talked about, and another one of my soapboxes is Sammy Sosa from 98 to 04. An amazing, like 3 years over 60 home run, whatever, like just incredible, and a pretty high average, like in the 280, like high 280s. But it's interesting, everything about Sammy Sosa, people perceive as coming out of a test tube. Like he was only because of, I was like, and to your point, you just said, like a lot of people were using steroids, but not a lot of people were doing Sammy Sosa stuff.
Yeah.
But for whatever reason, he seems to get the least credit for actually being a pretty good ball player.
Yeah.
Like, good outfielder, good arm, the whole thing. But so best five, you mentioned Chuck Klein. And so Brian and I talked about this, and me being a big baseball nerd, I'd never heard of Chuck Klein.
Yeah, I was amazed. I asked him, and I just assumed, Ben, that if you knew about Chuck Klein, the brain over here knew about Chuck Klein. And so I was really amazed when I asked him. He's like, "Nah, I've never heard of Chuck Klein," which seems like a travesty considering how good he was.
That's reassuring to me, because I was like, is it just me? Like,
no,
there can be a lot of experts and baseball guys who are like, Chuck Klein, of course,
No,
not on my radar at all. So there's a lot to that. And we actually do a segment every Monday called Athletes You Should Know. And we're not going to steal Chuck Klein from you, but
we would have if we had heard
it. Yeah, but
do it, dude. Do it.
Like Steve Dalkowski was one we did. DeJuan Wagner from basketball. Yeah, a couple others, but Chuck Wepner, the guy who was actually like the real Rocky, the inspiration for the movie Rocky, and some people. Do you know Steve Dalkowski?
No.
Oh man, we're going to talk. Look up Steve Dalkowski. That's an episode for you right there, Ben.
Okay.
He is amazing. One of my favorites. And actually, so I'll tell this and we'll get into Chuck Klein. So I tied a California League record by giving up 6 home runs in one game. So, nothing I'm really super proud of. But looking back.
But you're in the record books.
I'm in the record book.
Yeah.
Steve Dalkowski is one of my favorite statistical anomalies of all time. And so one day I'm combing through the California League record book, and I get to I Control F. I found my name in there. Most home runs in the game. So it was me and another guy, but right above my name was Steve Dalkowski for like most walks in a season or something like that. And I was like, I'm right there with Steve Dalkowski. So like, as a big baseball nerd, it made me super happy and thrilled. So I
Can I pause you for a second? Because you are you too aware of the Baseball Reliquary?
No, what is that?
Okay. So the Baseball Reliquary is a baseball museum. It's been going on since 1995. It's in California. And they celebrate players and fans who really have contributed something to the game. And so I just got this. So for $25 a year, you can become a member. And in March, they send you a booklet of all the nominees, right, and all their stories. And then you have a ballot that you can fill out.
Yeah.
and you vote for the players, right? And somebody like Steve Dalkowski would be a great nominee.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, like what you're talking about. And I talked to the current head of the reliquary, and it's a crazy museum. Like they have they have the craziest things. Like they have a supposed skin fragment of Abner Doubleday, the supposed founder. They have baseball signed by Mother Teresa, but it's actually part of an FBI sting, and it exposes the fraud in baseball merchandise. So
Tony Gwynn helped bring that down a few years ago. Do you remember that story? Yeah.
No. But I mean, it's really cool. And I suggest that they put W.P. Kinsella, author of Shoeless Joe, that turned Field of Dreams, back on the ballot, and they did. So
that's a good difference out there.
Yeah, yeah. So it's really cool. And a lot of the people, because they have people who made it to the Cooperstown Hall of Fame who are elected, and a lot of the people end up coming to the ceremony. So it's turned into a pretty big deal.
Yeah.
And so. Yeah,
maybe we'll do a Midnight Library Baseball / WrightStew Podcast trip out to California. That'd be a blast.
Yeah. I got a lot of trips to do.
No, you said sign thing, so I like it reminded me of. I'll tell a quick story, then we'll get back to Chuck Klein. So in when I was in Stockton, they would have kids would walk through the clubhouse before the game, like and just like it was like a little tour they would do for a couple kids with like the family. They were, and I started, and they would always give them like a signed baseball. And so I started getting just off the, like, I would get like, yeah, we always had baby powder in the trainer. I would get like guys to sign that and like give it to the kid.
Yeah.
So that's something I imagine like in this Hall of Fame, like here's a signed 1999 Stockton Porch bottle of baby powder. Like,
yeah.
And that's, that's minor league life. You just have way too much time to think about dumb stuff. And that's
Yeah, well, they have major league players, they have minor league players who are elected to it's called the Shrine of Eternals. They have women,
nice,
and they elect cool fans. Like they have in this bout, they have this guy Reuben Berman, and it's thanks to Reuben Berman, a stockbroker from Connecticut, fans can keep balls that are hit into the stands.
Oh,
right. So it's these kind of little details, these people who made these little changes that it's like, oh, that was a thing.
That killed the dead ball era, right? I mean, that was
yeah.
Good. Yeah. That's awesome. So we'll dive into that and take a look. That's really interesting. It's definitely something I
well, my next episode, or my second to next episode, is going to be all about the reliquary.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, tune in, everybody. Tune in, check that out. And all right, let's get back to your most recent though, Chuck Klein. Tell us about Chuck Klein, Ben.
Yeah. So Chuck Klein. He was this guy, working class, came up, finished high school, but then went into a steel mill, and he got big and strong. And that's what he credited his power from. So he came up in, I'm going to say 1928 or 1929 with the Phillies, and just tore the league apart. Like he has so many records in so many directions. It's ridiculous. Like he has, he hit for the cycle twice. He won the Triple Crown. Just his slugging percentage, and the thing that spurred this episode for me was total bases, which, like for me, that wasn't a stat I normally looked at. But then Shohei Ohtani really crushed it last year with total bases.
It's pretty good.
Yeah, and it's an obvious stat, right? It's just all your bases, and there are a lot of really good, like some of the best players in Major League history who don't rank as high as him for total bases.
And you mentioned Ted Williams, like his best season, it was like the 138th or something like that, right?
Yeah, Ted Williams' best season, and he didn't only hit for average; he hit for power. Like he had 30 home runs like 8 times.
And he killed Nazis.
Yeah, that too. Yeah,
he pretty missed out on some pretty.
I don't know if he gets any credit for that, but he definitely lost some baseball time for that.
Yeah, like legitimate. I don't know if you've done an episode on that. That would be an interesting.
Yeah, one. World War II and Korea. He was.
Yeah. He was in both. So Chuck Klein, total bases. Combing through the list of total bases. Where does he fall on the total list per season?
He is number 4, and then for another season he's number 9, and then for another season he's number 24. Again, so It's pretty ridiculous. Again, Ted Williams' best season for total bases didn't even come close to Klein's 5-year average when he went on this 5-year run, and the same for Mickey Mantle. So he was just blown out of the park. And speaking of parks, he played in Baker Bowl, and they had a short right field. I think it's 280, 282 maybe. So
was Chuck right or left-handed?
Oh, good question.
Because that, certainly would make a difference. Because Babe Ruth famously hit at Yankee Stadium with the short porch and right.
Yeah, I would think. Yeah, I don't know. That's you stumped me. I don't know.
That's fine. No, I was curious.
Yeah. It would seem like it would be left-handed because you'd pull the ball, but I guess you could hit a lot of opposite field home runs. Yeah, and that's another stat.
That's a routine fly ball to right there.
Right. Yeah. But that goes back to another reason. I thought, he played during the Depression. So baseball was down. People attending games was down. So not as much attention. If he was playing during the 1920s, it could have been a different story. It's like there's so many factors that contribute whether you're remembered or not. It could be these little things, could be how you market yourself. And he was pretty much forgotten until Richard Nixon brought him back. So it's a fun story.
Yeah. So that full episode is really interesting. So go back and check that out. That's one of the most recent episodes that Ben has released. And the other thing that's a part of that story, and you talk about it as well, is the Baker Bowl, right?
Yeah.
So as Chuck is getting Hall of Fame consideration, nobody's considering him because they thought the Baker Bowl really skewed his numbers. How do you think that affects now? So we've seen Larry Walker and Tom Helton, like with Coors, be inducted now, and which we thought would rock. Because you look at some of those 90s, where was it? We saw a reel or something of like the 90s Rockies, and it was like Galarraga was hitting like 330 with 40 home runs, Dante Bichette and Ellis Burks, and all these guys.
Yeah.
We're batting like they're all batting over 300, all with like 40 home runs. But everybody's like, that's Colorado. I'm like,
yeah. It feels like if you're gonna allow it, you allow it, right? If this is part of baseball, then it's part of baseball. It's like it shouldn't be, oh yeah, this is part of baseball, but we're not gonna allow you to be in the Hall of Fame because you played in this major league sanctioned ball field. Right?
Yeah, and they had away games. They weren't exclusively at home.
Yeah,
no, they weren't. Because it's really interesting that they held. It feels like maybe the town you were playing in, as far as your popularity as well, back in the day. You think about the Yankees players during that time frame were still really popular. Obviously, Boston was still really popular, and him being Philly, was that market just not as big, or just his post career, was it just so terrible that he kind of was gone and forgotten about?
Well, that's a really good point, because he was the only player to ever be traded after winning the Triple Crown. And he was traded because the Phillies were terrible and they were going bankrupt. And so they had to get rid of him. They had to offload him. So that was the market he was in. So it was unfortunate. So, that's a really good point, because if he was on a bigger team, New York at that time, St. Louis, Boston.
Well, everything was in the East. Yeah. Moved out west. Yeah.
But that definitely would have affected him. And then he was traded to the Cubs, and he didn't do as well. He still did well, but I think that definitely had an effect on people remembering him. Yeah.
And then he came back, right? He came back to Philly after.
He came back to Philly. He had some good years. He had a couple more really good years. Nothing like in the beginning. And he had a long career. It was like 16, 17 years. So
something in the water there.
Hey, he was a lefty. While you guys were adding to the conversation, I just happened to look it up. He was a lefty hitter. It wasn't obvious, though. He was a righty thrower, righty signer, lefty hitter. I can relate to that. That was me, Ben, back in the day.
Yeah.
But anyway, lefty hitter.
All right.
Yeah. So so we talked about the Baker Bowl, some historical stadiums. All right. So two-part question. One, is there a stadium that you've researched or always longed? Like, would you have loved to go see a game at the Polo Grounds in the 40s? And then part two, what is your current favorite major league stadium to visit?
I mean, I don't visit a lot of stadiums, so I mean, I'm near the Nationals, right? So,
Okay.
Yeah, I got a lot of traveling to do. So,
Yeah.
so many reasons.
Yeah, making a trip.
Yeah. Yeah, the Polo Grounds. I mean, that's where you're talking about the bluff where people could watch from the cliffs. I would love to go back to that. I think that stands out to me. In terms of stadiums I'd like to visit, I'm also close to Baltimore, but I haven't been to Camden Yards. So
Ben,
I know, right?
Hey, we went up there. We were up there last year.
Yeah, start yelling at me.
No, my son actually, he was like, Dad, we should go up to Baltimore because it's about a 6-hour drive from here, and he wanted to go check a game out. So the next time, next time we're up there, we'll call you, Ben. We'll go check out a ball game. That'll be a blast.
Well, hopefully, I'm going to be talking to Cal Ripken in the next month or two.
That's a big one.
Yeah, because his streak anniversary is coming up.
That's right. So that was a question I had listed for you. Of all time, I think that might be the answer. What are some of the all-time records that you see that will never even be approached?
Yeah, I mean, definitely that one. Like, do you agree? Like,
yeah. Well, no, you guys don't. How many guys in the big leagues last year played every game of I think there's like 2, like maybe.
Yeah.
And to play every game doesn't mean you start and play all night. A pinch hit counts as a game appearance, right?
Yeah.
So you can do that. We'll talk about a Cal Ripken thing off air that Brian and I will share with you.
I want to see if you've heard this rumor, and not that you can bring it up, but once we're not recording, we definitely have a question to see if you've heard what we've heard.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll address that with you. But so man, Cal Ripken, and we again, we were up in Baltimore last year. He has the Cal Ripken experience up there in Aberdeen.
Super nice, super well done.
Our boys played at the facility, and they have smaller scale versions of Memorial, Wrigley, Fenway, PNC, and it's beautiful fields, and the kids play on them and have a fun time. So
yeah, that sounds really cool.
Yeah, we were up there at Aberdeen last year doing that. Yeah. So again, you do a lot of statistical research. You do a lot, just dive into people's stories. Are there any other players just historically that we may not know that you've kind of just fallen in love with and really learned about? Like, wow, that's somebody more people should know about. I
mean, there are so many. You know, it's like people. I think it's comparable and fun to look at today. It's like players today who are standing out and to think, will they be remembered in 50 years? Yeah. It's like Shohei Ohtani, definitely. Yeah. But like people who are doing really well, because there are just so many players throughout history. And so my next episode is on Lefty O'Doul. Okay. Yeah. So, he has a really interesting story, kind of Rick Ankiel story. Yeah. It's like he started as a pitcher, then finally converted into a hitter, but he lost 10 years trying to be a pitcher and converting in the minor leagues to a full-time hitter. And then when he finally came up, he just destroyed everyone, and he ended up playing with Chuck Klein. So yeah. So the Baker Bowl comes back. But he left the Baker Bowl and still did extremely well in other fields. But then, he's credited with bringing, Japan and the United States together after World War II through baseball. So it's a pretty amazing story. But there are so many stories like this that I think I'm going to end up getting into, and people, giving me suggestions. They're like, "Oh, you should do a story on Bob Uecker. He just died, and his incredible." Yeah, I had a chance to meet Bob Uecker a couple times because I was at Big League Camp with the Brewers. Yeah, and man, what just a nice guy. I mean, just sit there and talk. And so,
I was like the guy with number 60 on my back. Like literally I was number 60 at big league camp.
Uh-huh.
And he treated me just like I was, who number 9, Marquise Grissom at the time, right? Like just treated and talked. And I just got done reading one of David Halberstam's books on the Cardinals and Yankees. It was like summer of '64. Their World Series, and there's some euchre stories in there. So I told him about one that I read. He's like, "Oh yeah, I remember that. They were so mad about that." And but man, yeah, what a just a great guy. So that was really interesting. Yeah, the one. And so you talk about stories. So my senior year, we had to write like a senior paper in English class, and this again may be a topic for you, man. I wrote about again the effects of World War II on baseball and baseball's how it can, and again, there's the women in baseball and a lot of things that kind of go into that. But
it sounds like a deep paper for high school.
It was
yeah,
certainly one of my passions was baseball, right? So yeah, but a lot of books, a lot of research. It was a lot of fun for me to dive into. And
what you don't know, Ben, Paulie was a 3-year letter winner in Latin club, right?
Oh yeah,
so he's a Latin club guy.
Yeah.
And he's really diverse from a intellectual, athletic standpoint.
Latin club. I started Latin club because the girl I was dating at the time
was into Latin. Don't hear that too often.
Yeah. I mean, the fact that Garner High School offered Latin was a whole other thing. I don't know how that came about, but
yeah. I'm a big Roman history fan, so there's I don't know if you.
That was actually we did an episode.
We did a topic like a bench you could go back to. That was mine, Ben. I would love to go back. MMA is coming back. It's very much a combat sport. One of the events, you just hit my passion. I would love to go back and see, are they really killing these? Are gladiators really doing this? Are emperors doing thumb up, thumb down, or Caesar or whoever? Yeah. It's a really interesting. It feels like we're kind of coming full circle on what is acceptable as a sport or entertainment.
Yeah, that's really interesting. So for my other podcast, History Repeating Itself, I did a series on football, and I did an episode comparing boxing, like what happened with boxing and the heyday of boxing in the U.S. to gladiatorial combat, and kind of the similarities and the decline, right? What ultimately ended up happening. But like it is interesting, as you're saying, it's coming back, right, in these different ways.
We did talk about that with George Foreman passing. We did talk about boxing in the past couple of days, and how it's really not much of a thing anymore at all, right? Outside of watching the Creed movies, I guess I don't really have much interest in boxing. But
yeah.
So a lot of history. Who are some of your current day favorite players that you like to watch?
I mean, I'm fascinated by the Dodgers and
all of them.
Yeah. I mean, so for a while, and you probably heard it in the podcast, like I was tracking, because the whole thing with the RBIs and statistics, right? And it's like if you have a great 1, 2, 3, then you're probably going to have a lot of RBIs as a 4th or 5th or 6th place hitter. And the Dodgers are stacked. And there's another team this year, I think. I don't know if it's the Mets. I think
the Mets have Lindor, Soto, and Alonso.
Yeah. Alonso's not batting 3rd, is he?
He may be in the
4th, but they have Vientos
a young guy coming up, going to be really good.
Yeah.
Or I guess Jeff McNeil will be later in the lineup. Who's the center fielder?
Nemo.
Brandon Nemo. He usually bats at the top.
He usually does. Yeah.
Yeah, they've got a pretty strong lineup as well. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, the Phillies as well with Schwarber, Trey Turner, Bryce Harper. And then maybe Castellanos or Rio Muto at there. That's pretty. Alex Bohm. They got 6 strong bats right there.
Yeah, I mean those are like in the Moneyball era. Like Schwarber is interesting, right? Because I think his WAR ranking is usually pretty low, right?
He doesn't play a position.
Doesn't play a position, hits 200, hits a bunch of bombs. I'm not a huge fan of watching him until he crushes one of those balls, and then I'm like, I'm back on board. With him.
Yeah.
I can't stand his approach. I can't stand all or nothing approaches. I'm much more of a Wade Boggs, hit and you find a way. Pete Rose, barrel to baseball. But I kind of go back and forth. He's awesome when he crushes the ball.
Yeah.
But he didn't lead off. That feels so dumb to me. But anyway.
Are you fans, especially watching games at the park, of like, would you rather see a home run or a triple or like a play at the plate?
I'll let you go first, Paul, then I'll answer.
Man, I've heard people say there's no more exciting play in sports than a triple. Like and triples are tough to come by.
Yeah.
There is something to a bomb being hit though, and just like I don't if it's a legitimate like 475 foot, I might rather see that, but than a wall scraper, I guess for sure. But
yeah.
I don't know, man. Triples are fun. That's exciting because you've squared the ball up, you've hit it good, and then sometimes you've got those quirky, Fenway corners, or Citizens Bank has some quirky spots, or it gets lost in the ivy at Wrigley, and like Andre Dawson, right? He's out there like fighting for the ivy to get the ball. And,
yeah.
I don't know. That's interesting. I think a triple, Ben, or definitely like a play at the plate is always exciting. That's always exciting. And home runs are so commonplace now that it's lost. It's not 80s baseball where it's a home run meant something. I mean, with the maple bats now and the baseballs being harder and pitchers throwing harder, right? And guys just trying to hit more home runs. Average is way down. So, I'm gonna go triple and play at the plate. That's where I'm going.
Yeah, I'm echoing. I didn't know where you were going to go. Obviously, as a hitter, you love to see the bombs, but inside the park home run is pretty awesome. You have a center fielder, somebody dive, gets underneath him, then a right field, left fielder's coming over to get it, and then a play at the plate. Play at the plate, we were talking about this yesterday. It's so confusing about how catchers can block or not block plates now. I don't want guys getting ran over. I want the second base being able to be taken out again at second base. I feel like that was a great thing in the game. I don't want anybody to get hurt, but I feel like you should be able to take the second baseman or shortstop out on a double play. But as far as play at the plate, if it's so confusing about what you can do. I'm going to answer a fourth one, even though you didn't give it. It would be inside the Parker. If that's not a choice, I'd go triple as well.
Triple plus one, yeah.
Make your own, yeah.
Triple bat throw, play at the plate.
Yeah. I mean, you can make half the field short and half the field long, and then you can have home runs and triples and inside the park homers, right?
Yeah. Or like the old saves with the 440-foot center field. Yeah.
I mean, that was polo grounds, though, right? That was polo grounds were really short down the lines, and then there was huge gaps.
Yeah.
Old Tiger Stadium had the flagpole in the field of play.
That seems terrible.
Yeah. Well, I remember when the
Astros had to up the hill.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was fun for everybody except the people who had to actually play on the hill. Like,
yeah.
Well, I mean, what you said, Brian, too. I'm wondering if we're gonna see more, because there's it's like now the batter, especially compared to 50, 60, 70 years ago, a batter has shin guards, elbow guards, right? The helmet got the mask that comes around. It's like, are you going to see that more on the field? Because you see it in little league.
Paulie loves the big foam fingers
for sliding. You mean
they give you an extra reach? Paulie loves it.
No,
I think you ought to limit. I think a helmet. I've seen so many times in college, and kids are doing it, right? Right-handed, left-handed hitter, and they stick the elbow over the plate and just let it hit the pad, and it's like, well, it wasn't technically a strike, but it was literally this much off the plate on the inside.
Yeah.
And I kind of think a helmet is the only thing you should be able to wear, and no sliding glove or sliding mitts or whatever. I'd love to get rid of that. Then let's take out runners on the double play.
Well, I'm talking about fielders though, because in Little League, like you have Little Leaguers, I think boys and girls who are wearing helmets on the field, right?
Masks.
And masks on the field, right?
That's definitely in softball. You see it a whole lot more. Baseball, not as much. Not really.
Oh, we don't hear at least, Ben. Yeah. We don't see that here. Yeah. Like Paul said, with the girls, we see it a lot. With the boys, and girls, for Pete's sake, the field is so small. I mean, I feel like I would need one if I was playing softball because everything's so tight. The girls are so strong. If I'm playing third base, I'm wearing a mask as a softball player or girl.
Yeah.
And so Ben, Brian quickly mentioned Pete Rose, and I wanted to get your take on that.
Yeah.
So Trump recently released it's a travesty that he didn't get into the Hall of Fame, and I think that's the sentiment of a lot. a lot of baseball fans. So he is in the Hall of Fame. His stuff is in there.
Yeah.
He does not have a plaque. He's not enshrined in Cooperstown.
Yeah.
And some of this goes back to the Black Sox, the gambling.
Yeah.
And in every clubhouse Brian and I walked into in professional baseball, the first thing you see is a sign that says no gambling, and then it gets all the kind of the statutes behind it, sort of thing. Yeah. And so what are your thoughts on, now Pete Rose? Do you want to see him in, or do you think it's who cares at this point? He's dead. It doesn't matter.
I think, I mean, you're separating, because a lot of what he did, or supposedly most of what he did, was as a manager, right? Not as a player.
The gambling was, as far as we know, it was he was the manager of the Reds and bet. And what he said was he only bet on his team to win.
Yeah.
So he never adversely affected. And I think they found the betting slips, and that was true.
Uh-huh. I think separating, to me, I would
separate the two.
Separate the two, yeah. Like, as a player, he definitely deserves to be, and he is in the baseball reliquary. So, and that's fans, that's members voting him in. And they said, yeah, he deserved to be in the shrine. What he did compared to the White Sox of 1919, like, to me, a lot of those players, it was, either a one-time thing, or, they'd done it only a couple times. I mean, what he did as a manager was egregious.
Yeah.
Like, there's no comparison there.
Yeah. That's interesting. Man, Ben, let people know how they can listen to the Midnight Library of Baseball or get some books. Just share with people how they can, maybe check that out.
Yeah, Midnight Library of Baseball. I'm on Instagram at Midnight Library of Baseball, and you can find it on iTunes or Spotify, or pretty much most podcasting platforms. And next episode again, Lefty O'Doul. That should be a good one. Hopefully my novel will be coming out
Awesome.
soon.
Hey, do you have a name for your novel yet? It's
called The Knuckleballer.
Okay.
Yeah.
Very cool.
I mean, this whole, I'm fascinated by the knuckleball, and I like, a lot of people are, it's like what people can do with the knuckleball, why you don't see more knuckleballs or knuckleball pitchers.
People in baseball hate the knuckleball. They hate it.
People hate it and love it, right? I mean, hitters hate it.
Managers, I'd imagine, don't
managers hate it too, because you can't control it and you can't catch it.
Yeah.
That's
well, there's the knuckleball documentary on Netflix is really interesting.
Yeah, that's good.
I had a chance to see Wakefield pitch a couple times, and when I was with the Red Sox, and it was crazy. It was exciting for me, like just a traditional, fastball slider guy. Like, to see.
Because you played in Pawtucket, right?
I did, yeah. I played in Pawtucket, and but this was at big league camp. I went and saw him pitch a couple times, and I got to meet him because I pitched in big league camp for an inning there with the Sox, and just to see it in person is like, I throw one with a wiffle ball that's pretty good. I can't throw one with a baseball.
Does it feel like, as a pitcher, like it's